It'll be our usual format today, which is having two sets of music with a short message in between. Today by Dr. Tad Miller. Tad is retired from Cal Poly, where he was an award-winning and distinguished professor of accounting. And he's always been one of my favorite people here at the church. So thank you, Tad, for doing that.
I'm really embarrassed. You know, they play all those songs, no notes, no music. And I got to have notes to talk for an hour. So I couldn't believe it when Craig called me up and asked me if I participated in the performance. And the first thing I thought of was, boy, there must be a lot of people that are out of town this week. So I asked Craig for some guidance, and he says, short. And I says, well, can you recommend a short song I should learn? And he says, I strongly recommend you stick to talking, which is something we should all be grateful for. And ironically, I want to talk about gratitude. And I feel kind of silly talking about gratitude, because I bet there's a bunch of people out there that know more about gratitude and think more about gratitude than I do. But I'm assuming that there's people out there that are like me that need to be reminded frequently. So, silly as it may be, I'm going to talk about gratitude. I'm thinking about one of my most successful students. And Dave was talking to me one time and he says, you know, every night before I go to bed, I make a list of 10 things I'm grateful for. And every morning, first thing when I get up, I make a list of 10 things I'm grateful for. And he smiled and he says, this isn't a test. He says, lots of mornings it's the exact same list that it was last night. And he says, some days it doesn't change much from day to day. But he says, I'm trying to get in the habit of being grateful. I think it's a wonderful habit. I used to listen to a guy named Wayne Dyer on public television. And he suggested that the last 5 or 10 minutes before you drift off to sleep are very, very important. And his theory was your brain doesn't really shut down completely. And whatever you're thinking about when you fall asleep, it kind of marinates in there overnight. That sounds good to me. So he'd recommend you fill your head full of positive, optimistic thoughts before you drift off to sleep. Now, Tad Miller thinks it's great to start your day on a positive note. You know, life may throw some chuck holes and speed bumps at us, but we have control of those first few moments of the day, and we can get off to a positive start if we want. Now, I need to confess a couple things. Every night I try and take note of the things I'm grateful for, and again every morning, but I don't write them down like Dave. And the other thing I need to confess is the last week or so, rather than that, as I lay down to go to sleep, I try and rehearse this presentation. I never did get to the end of it. I drifted off to sleep every night. So if you doze off while I'm talking, don't feel guilty. I can relate to it. I taught accounting for a long, long time. So I try and put everything on a balance sheet. Assets, liabilities, equity. And teaching accounting is easy. I mean, how much is your house worth? How much do you owe on your mortgage? And the rest is equity. That's about 3/4 of introductory accounting. But now I want to talk about the important stuff. You know, things I'm grateful for. Okay, and the other side could be challenges or problems, but I don't have many of them. Okay. And so on my balance sheet, I got some things like my friends, my families, my health, my pension. If I was clever, I would have added music to this for tonight, wouldn't I? Yeah. Okay. Now, an accountant, how do we increase the assets on our balance sheet? With the sale. Sales increase our assets. So my problem is, how can I increase the assets on my gratitude balance sheet? Well, my youngest daughter sent me an article. And it said, every day you should try and identify 12 beautiful things you encounter during the day. It could be a sunset, sunrise, a beautiful rose. Could be a beautiful act, somebody helping an old man across the street, especially if it happens to be me. Not to be outdone, my other daughter sent me an article that said every day you should try and identify 10 things which bring joy into your life. They're kind of related, aren't they? You know, the things that I find beautiful tend to bring joy into my life. And if something brings joy in my life, I should be grateful. So that's how I'm going to try to build my balance sheet. I'm going to try and take note of the beautiful things I see that bring me joy. But you know what's surprising? I have to work at it. I have to work to notice those things. Instinctively, I notice things that upset me and make me mad. I don't have to work at that. But for some reason, I have to work to notice all the beautiful things in my life and the things that give me joy. I'm working at it. I told one of my daughters the other day that, you know, some days I struggle to find 12 things that are beautiful. And she said, shame on you, Daddy. She says, you live in San Luis Obispo. She says, do you walk your dog every day? Yeah. She says, by the time you get to the park, you've had the opportunity to see 5 or 6 beautiful things. And you know, she's right. You know? And she says, if that doesn't bring you joy, shame on you. So we're fortunate to live in San Luis Obispo. We're surrounded by beautiful things, nice people. I live in a wonderful neighborhood. And so I've got lots of things that bring beauty and joy into my life. And maybe I should add the beautiful music tonight. Doesn't that bring joy? And shouldn't we all be grateful for that? And one other thing is we could be grateful for Craig, you know, for bringing this and making this available to us. So thank you all very much.